Reading for the Love of God, How to Read as a Spiritual Practice by Jessica Hooton Wilson. I just finished this book, you guys, and it was not what I was expecting. Honestly, I was wanting this book to be something that that I could recommend to anybody wanting to become a reader, right? I've been looking for a book that's like, what's the perfect book that I'm like, hey, if you need to be inspired to become a reader, like, here you go. This is what I'm going to give you. And this was definitely not that. It was, however, something that I think is equally as important, which is this was the book for someone who is already a reader who wants to take their reading to the next level and to become someone who reads consistently for soul transformation, right? So in this video, I literally just made a bunch of bookmarks on here. And I just want to go through and I want to read some of my favorite passages and I want to talk about it. And this is probably going to be a long one. And if you're not someone who already loves reading, it's probably not going to be of interest to you. But if you stick around through it, I guarantee it will change you because this lady has some really, really, really great and profound ideas and sayings. So I'm just going to go literally front to back, no real rhyme or reason, just as things stood out to me. So here we go. So the first part was from the chapter, What Kind of Reader Are You? And she says, there's a different way for reading for Christians than for others. We believe in the incarnation, which alters our experience not only of ourselves, but of all creation. Everything is spirit and matter. We believe in creation, fall, redemption, restoration. Our God was crucified by his people. Surely all of those beliefs radically affect the way we exist in the world, including how we read. And this is something that stuck out to me so much because after reading How Now Shall We Live, and thinking so much about a Christian worldview and this understanding of like, if you have like whatever worldview you have does and should affect literally everything that you do, right? So this idea was just not foreign to me at all. And it's something I've been ruminating on a bunch of like, oh my gosh, if I really believe these things that I believe, they should change and impact absolutely every single area of my life. And so pick whatever area it is, right? In this case, reading. How do these things and how should these things impact my reading? Because they should. Like, if they're true, if I really believe what I say I believe, it should have an impact on how I do everything, including the act of reading. And so what does that look like? What impact does the fall have on my reading? What impact does the crucifixion have on my reading? What impact does the resurrection have on my reading? How should those things make me read different than people who don't believe those things? And are those differences obvious in my life right now already, or do I just read the same way as other people who read, who don't believe those things, right? And if I am reading the same, if there's no distinguishable difference between how I'm reading and how a complete pagan unbeliever who decries all of the things that I say I believe is reading, like, that's probably a problem. That's worth kind of looking into. Like, why is that? That shouldn't really be the case, right? So yeah, I love that idea just from the Christian worldview perspective of like, if you hold a Christian worldview, it should affect absolutely every area of your life, including something as simple seemingly as what you read. And the next one was also from that same chapter where she says, against the seduction of screens, we must return to the love of the book, beginning and ending with the Bible, but including other books that enlighten Scripture for us and show us how to live like Jesus in our own time and place. Reading must be a daily spiritual practice for the Christian. A life of reading counteracts the malformation of screen and digital technology. It acts as an antidote to the bad habits of consumerism, utilitarianism, individualism, and other wayward isms. And primarily the thing out of that for me was reading must be a daily spiritual practice for Christians. And we're so uncomfortable with saying must or should or, whatever these things are. We're like, well, don't judge me. Like, I don't have to do that. You can't tell me what I should and shouldn't do and blah, 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 and there's so many things that are like, yeah, I can. Like, there are things that if X, then Y, right? So if you are a Christian, if you believe, like if your whole life is literally given over to the God who is the Word, then the Word should be very important to you. And if the primary way that you're supposed to get to know God is through His Word, then reading His Word should be very important to you. Then it's totally okay for me to say that if you are a Christian, you have an obligation to develop a daily reading habit. Like, that's not me trying to foist my ideas on you or trying to force you to become something or whatever. That's just me stating the obvious, right? Like, if the God that you believe in is the Word, and the thing that he gave you is his word, and the primary thing that separates you from the animals and makes you born in his image is the fact that you have words, because no other animal on the planet does, like, the word is pretty important. Right. And if you're living at it as if it's not, that's bad. Right. That shouldn't be a controversial thing for me to say. And I just love that she's just like, no, like, if you are a Christian, it should be a daily spiritual practice that you do, the same as prayer, the same as any of these other things. Right. And I just love that she's just like, just straight up on that. I'm like, yeah, my girl. And then next up was from the chapter, Why Read Anything But the Bible? And she had a quote from Augustine where he said, a person who is a good and true Christian should realize that truth belongs to his Lord wherever it is found, gathering and acknowledging it even in pagan literature. And this is something that's been with me for forever, that I've like argued with people about and just thought differently than people, because it's that thing of like, dude, if Christ is the truth, and if everything that I believe is actually true, then anywhere that somebody has found truth, they have found some glimmer of Christ. Like, there is no truth outside of him if he is the truth. And so if someone has found a truth in any way, shape, or form, then it's some kind of reflection and some kind of piece of the image of Christ, right? And so I don't need to be afraid to go and gather truth that I find in some kind of novel or whatever written by someone who is not specifically a Christian. You can watch my video on Jordan Peterson and my opinion on people's opinion of Jordan Peterson as a Christian if you want. But yeah, you just don't need to be afraid of that. If there is truth, and if your God is the source of all truth, then any truth that is found by anybody is them finding a glimmer of God. And so you can take it and you can internalize it and you can run with it, and you don't need to be afraid of it. There's no competing thing out there that is also true. There is literally only the God that you serve. And then next up was from the chapter, What's the Difference Between Use and Enjoy? And she was talking about these leather-bound copies of books that she had as a kid. And she said, these leather-bound copies with gilded pages made a strong impression on me as a kid. From those beautiful editions, I read Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Walden, Jane Eyre, and I knew because of their beauty, they were a different sort of reading from my R.L. Stine paperback novels. And she goes on to talk a little bit more about how we've lost this understanding of beauty. And she says, if we decry the fundraising for rebuilding Notre Dame Cathedral, we will become people who experience no tension when worshiping inside a YMCA or sending our children to schools that look like factory warehouses. As Christians, we are meant to love beautiful things, to visit art galleries, to desire aesthetically pleasing buildings, to stand still before the sunset. And this just, it hit me so hard, because I have been on this journey of learning to appreciate and understand beauty like I never had before in my life. And I think back to like 10 years ago, if I had read that quote, I would have been like, what do you mean? Like, there's no tension in worshiping inside a YMCA. Like it's church. We can worship God anywhere. It doesn't matter what the thing is, all this. And just coming on this journey of God just over time revealing the importance and the foundational quality of beauty. And it's so crazy, because it's like, if we are aware enough to be aware of the good, the true, and the beautiful, we're aware enough to recognize that modern culture has really attacked the good and the true, but most of us don't really pay any attention to how much progressivism and materialism and wokeism and all the isms have attacked beauty, and what the actual cost of that is. Like, the cost of this denigration and this redefining of ugly things as beautiful just shrivels up your soul. Like, it withers your soul when you don't have a proper understanding of beauty, and when you constantly lie and call ugly things beautiful, and when you believe this thing that fundamentally beauty is just a subjective thing, right? All beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it's just freaking not true, right? And so I loved that phrase, and just that it stuck out so much to me because of, again, this journey that I've been on of like, it doesn't matter where we have church and whatever, to now I'm like, no, like it does. Like, spaces should be beautiful. Like, these things do matter. Physical things matter. Physical space matters, right? It points us to the importance of things. Like she said, these leather-bound copies with these gilded pages, I knew this was different. I knew this was more important. I knew there was something fundamentally different about this. And total side note on that, but one of the things that really just messed with me on that was getting into premium Bibles, right? And, because it's like, dude, when you hold a premium Bible that's made with these premium materials and has incredible paper and these gilded edges and stuff, it was John Lovell I heard one time saying, like, dude, when I hold this, like, it's the Word of God, man. Like, I want to feel like I'm holding the Word of God. Right? I don't want to feel the same as if I'm holding a Brad Thor paperback, right? I want there to be a physical difference that helps bring my focus to the fact that this is different. This is something more. This is something different, right? And so, yeah, I just love that phraseology of like the experiencing no tension when worshiping in a YMCA. Just like, it's like that was a perfect line. And then next we had something from the chapter Reading Like Frederick Douglass, and she said, through Douglass's story, we receive a caution against the non-reading life. If reading makes one unfit to be a slave, does choosing not to read submit one to an enslaved life? When one of Douglass's masters, Sophia Auld, began to teach the 10-year-old Douglass to read, her husband quickly intervened. Learning would spoil the best slave in the world, Hugh Auld exclaimed. If you teach that slave how to read the Bible, there will be no keeping him. It would forever unfit him for the duties of the slave. I don't even know if I can add anything to that other than the quote I think was maybe by Mark Twain. I'd have to check that. But the quote that goes, the man who does not read is no different than the man who cannot read. Yeah. If reading makes one unfit to be a slave, does choosing not to read submit one to an enslaved life? You tell me. And then next up was from the chapter, Why Do You Need Four Senses to Read? And she was quoting a guy named Dan Kimball in his book, How Not to Read the Bible. And he warns that if we view the Bible as mainly a message for me, we will get in great trouble. First, we need to discern the literal and historical, the original audience, the human author, and the meaning of the original language, as well as the allegorical or spiritual significance before we read the words of the Bible tropologically, which is how does this apply to me? Without initially examining the literal and spiritual sense, we will, quote, end up picking and choosing the things we like reading and want to apply to our lives, unquote. Our knowledge of the Bible will be composed of our favorite verses about God's blessings. We will never wrestle with or be scandalized by the awe-inspiring character of God. And I loved that last line. Like, we will never wrestle with or be scandalized by the awe-inspiring character of God. And I loved it because I just finished We Who Wrestle with God from Jordan Peterson. And I think I've already linked this, but you can find my review of that up here. That was a long review, but I love that book. And I love just this concept of wrestling with God, because there's so much to it, right? There's this idea that I tell people all the time is like, okay, if God is infinite, then no matter how much you know about God, how much do you still not know about him? And it's like, well, like everything. Like, if he's infinite, no matter how much I know, what's left for me to still learn is everything, basically, right? And wrestling with that and wrestling with like, oh my gosh, I feel like I know God so much better and I know so much more about God and I'm so much more intimate with God now, after 2 decades of following him or whatever, and still having to wrestle with this humility of like, yeah, but the stuff that I don't know about him is exactly the same now as it was when I started out. Like, no matter how great my knowledge of God expands to, the amount that I don't know about him is still always exactly the same, which is basically everything, which is just like, but yeah, I loved that phrase. Our knowledge of the Bible will be composed of our favorite verses about God's blessing, and we will never wrestle with or be scandalized by the awe-inspiring character of God. And I'm telling you, man, the more you dig into it, the more you get scandalized. It's like the perfect word. And then next was from that same chapter. She had a quote where she said, only because we are out of practice does it seem pretentious in our conversations with others to offer up the best that has been thought or said? And this hit me so hard because even for me, like who reads a ton and I'm always like, oh, like this and whatever, I still kind of shy away from knowing an exact quote and saying an exact quote to somebody, right? Or just reciting a poem for somebody, right? To like help them in time of whatever. Like it just feels weird, right? And I love that she's like, it's literally only because we're out of practice doing it. Like there is nothing at all weird about sharing the best that has ever been thought or said. Like if this is the best that has ever been said about this thing, why would you feel bad or awkward or weird sharing it, right? So I just love this idea and this encouragement for me of memorizing more things exactly, like more poetry, more quotes, more of this, to be able to share them to people and share them with people directly at the proper times, right? Because this is the best that's ever been thought about this, right? I just heard a guy the other day that quoted the poem If, and just listening to that, you're just like, oh, like, is there a better description of like what it means to be a man? Like, I don't know. Like if there is, like, this is still in the top 5. Like, this is so good, So it's like, why wouldn't you memorize that? Why wouldn't you have that able to be recalled and offered up to somebody in the proper time, right? So yeah, just super encouraging thing for me in that of just like, I just want to be better about memorizing direct quotes and direct passages and direct poetry and all that, to offer it up at the proper time. All right. And then the next one was from the chapter Reading Like Dorothy L. Sayers. And this one, she says, much of what is branded as Christian fiction shows little care for or dedication to aesthetics. Form has been severed from content, with the emphasis falling on the latter. Such a dichotomy denies the reality of our theology. If we are embodied souls, if the word has become flesh, if the letter is bound with the spirit, then we cannot create convincing messages with faulty forms. Sayers extends this claim further. Quote, for a work of art that is not good and true in art is not good or true in any other respect, and it is useless for any purpose whatsoever, even edification, because it is a lie. And yeah. I don't think I have anything to add to that one. Okay, and then finally, in the frequently asked questions, she had a question of how do you choose what to read next, and she was talking about the books that she chooses, and she had this line where she said, while there is nothing wrong with reading twaddle, it is much like eating dessert. If your whole diet is composed of such stuff, your soul might vomit at some point. And again, I loved the phrasing of that, right? Your soul might vomit at some point, because it really is true. Like it's this thing of like, I'm always like, find a better book. Find, I just put out a video the other day, find books that are simple, not easy, right? Don't waste your time on all this stuff. But even still, I was talking with my wife the other night, and she had this book that she had picked up and was reading, and she was like, it's just terrible. Like the writing is terrible. The plot is terrible. Everything about it is terrible, but it's just basically a Hallmark Christmas movie in book form, right? And it's this baking competition, and just whatever. And it's just this sweet, terribly written love story that is it's just a Hallmark movie in book form, And she goes, I was just enjoying it. And I was just enjoying partly how terrible it was and enjoying just this sweet love story that didn't have any complicated, no world ending stakes and no whatever. And she was like, and so I just read it and I finished it and it was great. And so it's just that thing of like, it's not that you can't read stuff like that, right? But it's like dessert, right? It's like have a little bit of it every once in a while. But you can't make that your whole entire sustenance, or else your soul will vomit at some point. I love that. I just love that picture. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's so true. So yeah. All right. That's the last one that I had. Again, this was Reading for the Love of God, Jessica Hooton Wilson. I would very much recommend this book. Honestly, if you're still here after 20 minutes or whatever this has been, you're probably going to get it because you're still here. But yeah, really, really, really liked this one. Like I say, it was not what I thought it was going to be and not what I was hoping it was going to be. But it is something that, man, coming away from it, I'm like, dang, she has some really, really good stuff to say. So, yeah, that's all I got for this one. Links in the description for this and other books that I need. If you need another video to watch, that's right here. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.